Welcome to the International Straight Talk video series on the big emerging markets of the 1990s and beyond.
In China, there's a big issue about face. People are not only themselves. They are somebody's son and someone's father, someone's relative, and some unit's employee, and some leader's follower, and maybe themselves are kind of leader. So they are playing different roles, many different roles, and they have many different faces. And those faces are connected with each other. So they are like a spot on the web. They are deep connected with the whole society. So when they act, when they conduct their business, when they even relax at home, they have different faces. People are really conscious about giving them self-faces to protect themselves and also to give other people faces. So American are much more individualism. People don't think about face issue too much when they conduct their business. So it's a very different situation in China.
All social relations in Chinese society are conducted within an atmosphere of concern for face. Thus, one of the most damaging reputations any person can have is that he does not give face. In other words, that he embarrasses the people he deals with and causes them to lose face. Conversely, a person who is proficient in the art of giving face not only enhances his own face, but ensures that the most effective possible professional and personal relationships are going to take place with the Chinese that he deals with. So losing face is much more intense than anything like suffering embarrassment or shame. In extreme cases, as we said, it could be like losing all of your senses, losing your place in life. Complete loss of face is very much like full exile, where you become a non-person, even to family and close friends. A person who's lost face severely can't speak or be spoken to by others, can't be heard or seen. They're simply not here. Conversely, gaining face enhances what is most precious to people, the nurturing bonds that comprise their whole identity. So when a person gains face by the act of another, there is no gift more appreciated or more significant. Keep in mind that regardless of the technical or business concerns of your Chinese associates and colleagues, it's very likely that on a deeply personal level, nothing you can offer them is more important than for their face to be enhanced by the simple act of dealing with you.
When my Chinese associates come to visit me in the United States, I always try to be sure that their time is managed well and that they're taken good care of. The Chinese are the most hospitable people on the face of the earth, and they will treat you wonderfully when you're there. And they expect the same type of treatment here. And if you can keep in mind that they often are not as adept at getting around in a U.S. city as we may be in a Chinese city, and schedule events for them. Don't leave them alone on the weekends in their hotel, but take them to shopping malls or find out really what they want to do and do those things. And remember that they need to take gifts home to their families and help them shop and provide for those things. Treat them to a big meal, and probably on the best time to do that is on the first night that they're there. Take them out to a Chinese restaurant and have a Chinese banquet. And you're the host, and you need to learn how to host properly in a Chinese way, which includes toasting and speech making and just being the cordial host.
To the individualistic Westerner, the intensity with which Chinese people guard, nurture, care about, and are motivated to continually enhance their own face and that of others can seem strange and extreme. But for your Chinese counterparts, it's not strange or extreme at all. It's the Chinese way of making yourself secure and hopefully prosperous and fulfilled in life. So for an American to say or do anything which separates a Chinese counterpart from this source of identity is painful and even frightening in ways which, as a Westerner, we can never fully comprehend. Nevertheless, developing an appreciation of the importance of face and avoiding trivializing it by making inappropriate comparisons with Western ego-centered concepts will be one of the most important things you can do to make your business in China a success. Relations is a literal and not very satisfactory translation of the Chinese term guanxi. Guanxi is a term that describes the intricate, pervasive network of personal relations which every Chinese cultivates with energy, subtlety, and imagination, because guanxi is the currency of getting things done in China, of getting ahead in Chinese society. Guanxi is essentially a relationship between people containing implicit mutual obligation. This is to say that when Mr. Smith and Mr. Yang have guanxi, Smith can call on Yang for any reasonable favor and can expect that in most situations, Mr. Yang will defend and promote Smith's interests on his own initiative, whether Smith has asked him to or not. This is because Smith has accepted the obligation of doing the same kind of thing for Yang under similar circumstances. A person who has wide and effective guanxi is and will continue to be a success in Chinese society. This person has perhaps literally of hundreds of people actively thinking about and promoting his business and personal interests without any effort on his part. Well, actually, that's not quite true. The effort required to receive the benefits of guanxi is that you have to reciprocate in every possible way at all times and to continually tend to the interests of everyone in your network. But on a day-to-day basis, the work done on behalf of any given person by the dozens and perhaps even hundreds of people with whom that person has guanxi goes on without any direct effort on the person's part.
After you've established a relationship, be sure to maintain it through intermittent, constant contact, through letters, through faxes, phone calls if you wish, just keeping in touch, certainly a couple of times a year. I know that I have certain Chinese contacts in Hong Kong, for instance, who I have not seen for years, who I get 2 or 3 cards from each year, and sometimes I feel embarrassed when I'm not able to return the favor, but I appreciate the fact that once you make a friend in China, it's not uncommon at all to keep that friend for life, and they consider you to be a friend for life as well and a contact for life. This can be a great advantage, and it can be great fun as well. So take advantage of it, but also realize that the continuum stretches out over years. And while you won't exactly be tested for your friendship, they will very much appreciate if you reciprocate in continuing the friendship over a long period of time. And this will certainly show up on your bottom line, too, if that person happens to be a business associate.
An American might say that this is no different from the proposition that you scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. But American practices in this area and many others can't be compared with Chinese guanxi and all of its implications. Guanxi is not just the network or the everyday traffic of giving and receiving benefits and obligations. Guanxi is also the underlying foundation that's been laid down over 5,000 years. It's the force behind the actions of tending and participating in the network every day. Everybody in China tries to cultivate guanxi. You must realize that to the extent you are working with Chinese organizations of any kind, you're going to be working within a guanxi environment. In bureaucratic organizations, guanxi is what reduces what otherwise might be endless red tape and delay. In surveying business opportunities, guanxi is what will get you frank answers and access to hidden information. In making critical business plans, guanxi is what will get you access to possible rulings, expressed, of course, as informal opinions. Few non-Chinese Americans will ever be in a position to cultivate and nurture guanxi the way a successful foreign Chinese business person can do in the PRC, since we don't really belong to the relevant worldwide Chinese networks. And so There is far, far less that we can offer, in one sense, to mainland Chinese associates. But what a non-Chinese American business person can do is to seek to establish good, friendly, personal relations using the principles and the suggestions that we'll be covering in the video and the accompanying diskette with Chinese counterparts, officials, professionals, and social equals. Keep in mind that Chinese people place a high value on even relatively casual personal relationships, and that these relationships can be of real help to you as you try to get things done within the larger Chinese guanxi system.
The reality is that we have more trade with the ASEAN region, Southeast Asia, than we do with the People's Republic of China, and a goodly number of major business people in those countries are what they call overseas Chinese, people of Chinese origin. Even in Vietnam, you find many if not most of the entrepreneurs in Vietnam are actually Chinese ethnic origin. So when we're talking about doing business with the Chinese, you don't want to just focus on the People's Republic of China, but remember that there's this tremendous region that some people call Greater China that extends all over Asia and indeed all over the world.
Guanxi is encountered at its strongest when dealing with the Chinese official bureaucracy. American business people who have navigated successfully in this bureaucracy, obtaining necessary permissions, receiving favorable rulings, and generally operating with a minimum of interference, have a number of suggestions to offer to you. Keep in mind that the ultimate success of your deal in China may well depend upon cooperation between many more people than just the ones you deal with directly. This is why you should never turn down a chance to meet new people in China, even if they may not seem directly connected with your core business interests. How quickly and how well your proposal moves through the bureaucracy depends partially on how influential the agency you're dealing with is within the hierarchical structure of the total bureaucracy. Don't assume you can gauge such things. Develop relationships with those who know and who can tell you. Also, what appears to be the most relevant ministry or unit, the one where you think you would most naturally begin dealing, may not turn out to be the best place to begin. Again, don't just rush in everywhere, because you will have a very hard time withdrawing if it turns out you've chosen wrongly in the beginning. Any agency or unit that you get to sign off on a proposal will have to have the approval and cooperation of other units or agencies who may actually have conflicting agendas and objectives. Don't assume that Chinese agendas contain only business-related or economic items. In China, social and political items often have a very high place on many agendas, agendas which Americans would limit to strictly business issues and concerns. Keep in mind that guanxi determines relationships between agencies or between units of agencies in China. Try to deal with people who have extensive guanxi. You can often find these people by the many different trails of relationships which all seem to lead back to them. Disagreement or lack of cooperation by a very small, apparently unconnected agency or unit can effectively derail an agreement between a larger, apparently more powerful agency and you. So don't neglect to tend the more remote parts of any official network in which you find yourself working. We've now come to a natural breakpoint between parts 1 and 2 of the video. In part 1, we reviewed 2 key cultural concepts which every American business person must become familiar with in order to manage human relationships for competitive advantage in China. The concept of face lies at the core of personality in China to the same degree and in the same way as the concept of self lies at the center of American personality. The concept of guanxi lies at the core of Chinese business relationships in the same way and to the same degree that concepts like independence and self-sufficiency lie at the core of American business relationships. With these 2 main points in mind, in part 2 we'll explore some of the principal areas in which Americans can put these concepts and others to work in business in China today. The first main concept we'll explore in part 2 will be how to manage your business affairs and navigate effectively in the complex Chinese social and cultural environment. Also in part 2, we'll focus on what American business people need to know before even beginning negotiations with Chinese counterparts, including the many different ways in which the Chinese view the purpose of negotiations and the relative value of their negotiating partner. From your first day in China, you'll begin to realize the profound meaning of the simple fact that although you are seen by the Chinese as different from them, your words and deeds will almost invariably be judged strictly by Chinese standards. Although China has been open for many years now, relatively few people living in China today have extensive experience with Americans. As a consequence, very few Chinese possess the experience that would enable them to judge the behavior of an American by American standards. Besides, most Chinese aren't inclined to cut foreigners much slack anyway. Just as for several centuries Americans have been accustomed to the world coming to us rather than us having to go to the world, and as a result we generally expect people to learn English, act American, and stick to American ideas of ethics and morality. The fact is that China has been taking exactly this same perspective, seeing itself at the center of the universe, for over 5,000 years.